it's time to start asking some really critical questions. And those questions are we aligned on the same vision? Do we have the same values, or enough values at least that we can work together? I want you to imagine for a second that you're not starting a business. You're chartering a flight. And this flight can be wherever you want to go. Let's say you're chartering a flight from Toronto to Vancouver. The destination is the idea. It's like the idea of your business. But at some point, people are going to start to ask some really important questions, like, have you ever flown a plane? Do you have a pilot? Do you have a co-pilot? Do you have a mechanic that can fix the plane in case something goes wrong? Do you have a ticket salesperson that can sell tickets to the flight and get people on the plane? Do you have a baggage handler? Do you have a stewardess that can go up and down the aisle? These are questions that people are going to ask, and they're going to want to understand, how does this actually come together? So this comes down to building a team. And as founders, I think we get told often that we need to build teams. But what makes a great team? Now, I've had a chance to work on a number of teams. I worked at Dell for almost 15 years. I worked in a number of teams. I worked on a number of projects and some really interesting stuff. I ran for politics federally and provincially. I had to run campaign teams and work with campaign workers. I run my own business, and I work with co-op students, and I have to manage them and act as a team with them. And I've got a couple of other ventures that I'm working on, and with those, I'm actively going out and building teams. And so the team part is actually really, really important to figure out. So how do you do this? Well, to me, I think there's three really critical elements that you need to nail. You have to get alignment around the values and the vision with the people that you're recruiting. You need to have the expertise and make sure you're getting the right expertise. And you need to have trust. I spend a lot of time in the car going to customers, and I do a lot of drives. And when I'm not doing that and I have some spare time, I'll go and do a walk. And what I usually do when I do that is I try and maximize my time, and I'll listen to podcasts or audiobooks. And some of my favorite books to listen to are biographies. And my favorite is the biography of Steve Jobs. And if you've never read it, I really encourage you to go and just read this or listen to it. And it's really interesting to look at the partnership between Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak. Because these guys, they start from this base of having shared values. What were Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak's values? They weren't necessarily the same values that you or I might have. One of the most interesting stories that come out of the biography is, in part of their early meetings, they decide that they're going to build this hacking device that allows them to get free long-distance phone calls by using sound waves to trick payphones into putting in free quarters. Not necessarily the best social values, but I might say that they were playfully anti-establishment. And these were values that were really core to them. When you look at Steve Jobs' story, he was pretty much a hippie and into the counterculture. So was Steve Wozniak. And if you think about the time period that they were in and what they were trying to accomplish, today we have these computing devices that are with us at all times. I'm looking out in the crowd, and half of you have a laptop or a phone in your hand. But when Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak were building this idea, the computer systems were locked in these really large institutions. It was really large corporations that had access to computer technology, or it was really well-funded universities that had access to computer technology. It wasn't available to everybody else. And they saw a vision of actually democratizing that technology. They saw a vision of taking the values they had of that hacker mentality and that anti-establishment mentality and turning it into a vision of enabling computer technology for everybody. And so this is it's a perfect example of what can happen when you really align around vision and values. You can argue that they both also had quite a bit of expertise. And if I look at another really interesting team, again on the technology side, you have Bill Gates and you have Steve Ballmer. Now, Bill Gates is a classic definition of expertise. There's another great book from Malcolm Gladwell called The Outliers, and he talks about this concept of expertise, which is if you get 10,000 hours of practice at a particular skill, you're pretty much considered an expert. And that's the opportunity that Bill Gates had. He actually had access to some of this computer technology that was locked away in institutions from a really early age and built up this expertise around programming and development at an age where most people didn't get that opportunity. Steve Ballmer didn't have programming expertise, but he still had expertise in business development and sales and leadership and motivation. Some of my favorite videos of Steve Ballmer are him running up and down podiums at developer conferences and just firing everybody up. Yeah, that was his skill and his expertise. You know, when you look at expertise, you want to find people that are adding to the required skill set that you need. They don't need to have the same expertise that you do, but that expertise should be complementary. Yeah, there's a reason that planes have a pilot and a co-pilot. A, there's a bit of redundancy there, but B, they're also bringing different skills and different eyes to a problem. And good teams can outperform individual performers. Now, do you think that Steve Jobs and Bill Gates would make a great team? Probably not. I mean, they both have expertise. They may not share the same values. So having that alignment in values is really important along with the expertise. But to me, the last thing is also critically important. There's a great article that came out in Canadian Business about Target and why it failed in Canada. And they talk about a few things about what led to this failure. Part of it is just these big structural decisions that were made. Yeah, they bought 133 properties from Zellers at the same time. And they made the classic startup mistake of trying to scale too fast. Yeah, they made some really bad decisions about the technology that they were going to adopt. They tried to build a whole new ERP system from scratch and implement it in a year and a half, which normally would have taken 4 years. The data that was in this ERP system was all incorrect. And this started to snowball into bigger and bigger problems. And underlying all of this was this idea that people didn't always trust each other enough to call themselves out on their mistakes. Leaders in the organization would make a call, and the people underneath them didn't feel like they could question those decisions. There's a great part of the article where they're talking about this one issue where the people are walking into the stores and there's literally nothing on some of the shelves. And the warehouse is saying, well, all the stuff's shipped out to the stores and we're seeing in the ERP system that everything's stocked. We don't understand what the problem is. And when they troubleshooted what that was, the people who were entering the data to say whether there was stuff on stock or not were putting in false data, because every time they put in the truth, a manager would call them and yell at them as to why there was no stock on the shelves. And so they were just afraid to actually do the right thing. Now, all kinds of these issues came up. And to me, it all comes down to trust. There was another really good article a few weeks ago, and it was an analysis of Google. And Google did this internal research project on what makes good teams perform well. What is the key factor that makes these teams outperform other teams? And do you know what they came up with? Be nice. Yeah, just be nice. And to me, I looked at that and I'm like, well, this is interesting. And I read a little bit more into it. And it goes a little bit more than just be nice. What they talk about is to provide an environment of what they call psychological safety, where people feel comfortable enough with each other on the team to work through problems together and to solve problems together. And they found that these teams that have this psychological safety, they're still challenging each other, but they're respectful of each other as a team. They trust each other, and they're able to work through these things faster and perform better. And I can tell you from firsthand experience, I've worked on a team that was the opposite of this. We had a team that was pulled together of a bunch of rock star talent to build this new service. And it only took one bad person on the team. One bad person to create an environment where people didn't feel safe to challenge each other. And people didn't feel safe to work together. And what happened? 6 of the people on that team actually left and went and worked on other projects, including myself. I said, this is not the environment I want to be in. I'm going to go do something else. And that project failed. So you have to be able to build trust. It's critical. So what's an example of a great team to me? Has anybody ever watched Knight Rider? So this was my favorite TV show when I was a kid. I watched this from the age of 5 to like 8, and I was fascinated by this show. And it's actually a great story about teams. Yeah, the protagonist is this character named Michael Knight. He was a rogue cop. He's a lone wolf cop, always did stuff by himself. He ends up getting himself shot. People think he's dead. And this external organization that has this vision of fighting crime takes him on, and they make him their kind of lead investigator. But they give him a partner. They give him a teammate. And the teammate is a self-driving talking car. Yeah, I loved this when I was a kid. And together they make a great team. They have each other's back. They have this same shared sense of values. They both want justice. Yeah, they're both willing to step outside the lines of what's legal to get justice, but they're still being ethical about it. They really want justice. They have different areas of expertise. Michael Knight's the guy who kind of runs out, guns blazing, has that investigative, intuitive sense. Kit, the driving car, has the analytical side. He's literally his protector. And there are other people on the team as well. They've got a mechanic that can fix the computer systems and keep the car running. And the person who runs the organization provides them with the air cover and the funding and makes sure that all the logistical stuff is taken care of so that they can go and solve these really tough cases. So to me, this is just a fantastic example of an excellent team. So I encourage you to go to Netflix tonight and just watch a couple of episodes. So to me, the message of this is to go vet your team. Now, if you're at that point of thinking of, I need to find a partner, or I need to find a co-founder, or we're starting to bring on employees, it's time to start asking some really critical questions. And those questions are we aligned on the same vision? Do we have the same values, or enough values at least that we can work together? Do we have contributory expertise? Is this someone that is going to add to my organization? Are we going to take that 1 + 1 and make it 5? And most important of all, Can you trust each other?